Hey there, beautiful souls. I'm Lilly, and welcome back to another episode of this podcast where we talk about real life, real struggles, and real transformation. Before we dive into today's deep conversation, I want to extend a massive thank you for being here with me right now. If you're finding value in these episodes, please take a second and like this video, because it truly does help me reach more people who need to hear this message. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, because we're building something special here together, and you won't want to miss a single episode of raw, honest wisdom. And hey, while you're at it, go check out the podcast playlist on this channel, because there are so many other episodes that might just hit different depending on where you are in your journey right now. Every single episode is designed to help you grow, challenge you, and ultimately transform the way you see yourself and your life. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's talk about something that's been on my mind a lot lately. Let's talk about what happens when you finally decide to stop running from yourself and start building toward your dreams. This is the conversation that could change everything for you. You know, I spend a lot of time thinking about the stories we tell ourselves. And I'm not talking about the stories we tell other people, like how we frame our lives on social media or in conversations with friends. I'm talking about the stories we tell ourselves in the middle of the night when nobody's watching. The ones we replay over and over until they become our identity. The ones that convince us we're not enough, that we've already failed, that our best days are behind us. I met someone a few months ago named Marcus. He was this incredibly talented software developer, had all the technical skills you could imagine, spoke 4 languages, could pick up new coding frameworks faster than anyone I knew. But when I asked him what he was working on, his whole energy shifted. He told me about this project he'd worked on about 5 years ago that completely failed. It cost his previous company thousands of dollars, and he got let go because of it. And here's the thing that broke my heart. He was still living in that failure like it happened yesterday. He was still telling himself the same story. I'm the person who destroys things. I'm reckless. I'm not trustworthy with important projects. 5 years had passed. He'd succeeded at 3 different companies since then. He'd helped build products used by millions of people. But the failure was the story he believed in, not the success. And because he believed in that story, he kept playing small. He turned down leadership positions. He didn't pitch his own ideas. He stayed in the background because in his mind, his failure was proof of who he really was. But here's what I know. A failure is an event. It's not your identity. It's something that happened. It's not something that defines you forever unless you decide it does. The weight we carry from yesterday's stories is incredible. Like, think about it. Every single day, you're walking around carrying the emotional weight of things that already happened. You can't change them. You can't go back and rewrite them. They're done. They're finished. But you're still here, right now, in the present moment, living as if you're still stuck in that past situation. It's like watching a movie on repeat that you've already seen, that you didn't like the first time, and yet you keep rewatching it and getting upset at the same plot points over and over. Here's the radical truth that nobody wants to hear. You can literally decide to stop believing those stories today. Not tomorrow. Not after you've done more therapy or read more books or found the right person to validate you. Today, right now, you can decide that past event is not the definition of who you are. It happened. It was painful. It might have changed your circumstances. But it doesn't have to keep changing your mindset and your decisions. I had another friend, Jen, who spent 7 years in a relationship that was honestly pretty toxic. Not in a dramatic way, but in those quiet ways where someone slowly diminishes your confidence without ever really doing anything you could point to. The relationship ended, and she spent the next 3 years talking about it like it was just proven that she couldn't pick good partners. She felt like she had terrible judgment. She told everyone she met, right after hello, about that relationship and how she'd learned not to trust her own instincts anymore. And what happened? She kept attracting people who weren't right for her because she was approaching every new relationship from a place of doubt and fear. She was literally proving her own story true by how she was living. Then one day, she got tired of carrying that story. She decided she was done introducing herself as someone who was bad at relationships. She decided those 7 years were just a chapter in her life that taught her what she didn't want. She started dating from a place of clarity instead of fear. And guess what? She met someone great within a few months. Was he perfect? No, but he was present. He was kind. He actually valued her. But she only found him because she stopped being the character in her own sad movie. The thing about yesterday's stories is that they're not actually keeping you in the past. The past is gone. What's keeping you there is the present moment choice to believe those stories and let them run your life. That's the difference. The past event isn't powerful. Your belief about what that event means, that's powerful. And you have complete control over that. You can look at the same event and choose a completely different narrative. You can decide that it taught you something instead of broke you. You can decide that it made you stronger instead of weaker. So here's what I want you to do, and I'm serious about this. I want you to write down one story you've been carrying, one narrative about yourself that you've believed for years. It can be something small or something massive. Maybe it's, I'm not creative, or nobody takes me seriously, or I always fail when it matters most, or I'm too anxious to do what I really want to do. Just write it down. And then I want you to sit with that story and ask yourself, is this actually true? Or is it just true because I decided it was? Because those are two very different things. One is reality. The other is a choice. And I'd like to invite you to consider changing that choice. Okay, let's talk about something that I see destroying people's lives from the inside out. And that is the desperate need for external validation. And I say desperate because that's what it feels like when you're in it. It feels desperate. It feels urgent. It feels like if nobody notices you, then you don't really exist. And I'm going to tell you right now, that is a lie that we've all been fed, and it's time to stop believing it. I have this friend group, and I think everyone has friends like this, where there are some people who are absolutely consumed with what other people think about them. And I'm not talking about being considerate or caring about how your actions affect others. I'm talking about the kind of person who can't make a single decision without checking how it plays on social media, who won't go on a vacation unless they can photograph it perfectly for their followers, who gets anxious in a room if they're not the center of attention, who measures their worth by how many compliments they get or how much engagement their posts receive. You know what's wild? These people are exhausted. I mean bone deep, soul deep exhausted. Because you're literally running a never-ending race to get approval from people who don't actually know you, who are distracted by their own lives, who, frankly, don't care nearly as much as you think they do. You could post something today and get 1,000 likes, and it still wouldn't feel like enough. You'd wonder why the other 5,000 followers didn't like it. You'd wonder what was wrong with it. You'd immediately start planning the next post that might do better. I watched someone, let's call her Amanda, absolutely destroy a beautiful business idea because she posted about it too early to get feedback from the internet. And the internet, as the internet does, was judgmental and discouraging. Random people she'd never met told her it was a bad idea, that it would never work, that she should do something else instead. And instead of thinking, I don't care what strangers think, she thought, oh my God, they're right. I should stop. She talked herself out of something she was genuinely passionate about because she needed the approval of people she would never meet to feel like her idea was valid. A year later, someone else built something very similar. It's wildly successful now. Amanda told me she thinks about that sometimes and feels sick knowing she had the idea first, but didn't have the confidence to pursue it without the validation of strangers on the internet. That's what the need for external validation costs you. It costs you your ideas. It costs you your dreams. It costs you the version of yourself that you could have become. Here's something that took me a long time to understand. The people whose lives you actually want to emulate, the people who are living freely, building things, making an impact, they don't care that much about what you think. I'm not being mean about it, I'm just being honest. They care enough to be kind. They care enough to not hurt you. But they're not checking in with your permission before they make decisions. They're not refreshing their Instagram to see if you liked their post. They're not canceling plans because they're worried you might judge them. That's not because they're callous or selfish. It's because they figured out something crucial. Your opinion of them is not actually their business. It's yours. What you think about them is a reflection of what you're bringing to that observation. Your own insecurities, your own limitations, your own perspective. It doesn't actually tell them anything real about themselves. So why would they organize their entire life around managing your perception of them? That would be insane. This is why I say validation from outside yourself is one of the most dangerous addictions you can develop. And it is an addiction. The more you get it, the more you need it. The less you get it, the more anxious you become. It's a chemical thing that happens in your brain. Every like, every comment, every piece of approval triggers a dopamine response. And then you chase that feeling. And then you need more of it to feel satisfied. And then the only way to feel okay is to keep chasing it. It's literally the same mechanism as a substance addiction. Your brain doesn't know the difference. So how do you break this? How do you unplug from the need for external validation? Step 1 is acknowledgement. You have to admit to yourself that you've been living for other people's approval. Not in some vague, everyone does it kind of way, but really see it. See how it's showing up in your life. See what it's costing you. See the things you're not doing because you're too worried about judgment. See the decisions you're making based on what you think other people want instead of what you actually want. Step 2 is you have to start building your own internal validation system. This takes practice, but it's so worth it. You have to start noticing when you do something good and acknowledging it yourself instead of waiting for someone else to acknowledge it. You have to start making decisions based on your values instead of based on how they'll look to other people. You have to start asking yourself, what do I think about this? Instead of immediately wondering what other people think. That's where your power actually lives. I'm not saying you should become someone who doesn't care about anyone or anything. That's not the point. The point is, you should care about people you actually know and love. You should care about your values and your impact and doing things that align with who you're trying to become. You shouldn't care about the judgment of strangers. You shouldn't care about the opinion of people who have never invested time in actually knowing you. You shouldn't make decisions based on the fear of judgment from people you'll probably never meet. The most free people I know are not the ones who don't care about anything. They're the ones who are very clear about what and who they care about, and they've completely detached from caring about things outside of that circle. They build their life based on their values, their vision, their version of success. And yeah, some people are going to judge them for it. Some people are going to think they're weird or wrong or not enough. But here's the thing. Those people who are judging them, they're also not thinking about them nearly as much as they think they are. Everyone's too focused on their own stuff. I'm going to say something that I think our culture really needs to hear right now. And it's that being selfish might actually be one of the most important things you can learn to do. Now, before you shut down on me, hear me out. I'm not talking about hurting people. I'm not talking about being cruel or manipulative or taking advantage of anyone. I'm talking about protecting your own energy, your own time, your own vision with the kind of fierceness that we usually reserve for other people. Think about your life right now. How much of your time are you spending on things that genuinely matter to you? How much of your energy are you using on your own dreams and your own healing and your own growth? Or are you spending most of your time maintaining other people's lives, solving other people's problems, showing up for people who don't show up for you? Be honest about that. Actually sit with that question for a second. I had this realization recently when I was talking to a woman named Sarah. Sarah works a full-time job, and then she goes home and spends her evenings listening to her adult children's problems. On weekends, she's doing favors for her sister, helping with her nieces, running errands for her parents. Her partner wants more attention from her, but she's exhausted by the time she gets to him. She hasn't read a book in years. She hasn't taken a single day to herself. She can't remember the last time she did something that was just for her. But you know what? She's convinced that this is what love and loyalty look like. She thinks that being a good person means being available to everyone all the time. And here's the most heartbreaking part. Nobody's actually thanking her for it. The people she's helping have just gotten used to her help, and now they expect it. And when she's tired and can't help, they get annoyed with her. But she keeps doing it anyway because she's been taught that her own needs are less important than everyone else's needs. And I want to say very clearly, that is a lie. Your needs are not less important. Your dreams are not less important. Your healing is not less important. They're equally important, and in fact, they should probably be more important because if you don't take care of yourself, you have nothing to give anyone else. Here's a metaphor that actually works. You know how on airplanes they tell you to put on your own oxygen mask before helping someone else? There's actually wisdom in that. If you're running around helping everyone else when you're barely breathing, you're not actually helping. You're just slowly suffocating together. You have to take care of your own oxygen first. You have to make sure you're functioning. You have to make sure you're okay. And then, from that place of stability and strength, you can actually help other people in a meaningful way. Being selfish means protecting your time with the same fierceness that you would protect a child. It means saying no to things that don't align with where you're trying to go. It means canceling plans when you need rest instead of pushing yourself to exhaustion to avoid disappointing someone else. It means building your own dreams even if someone thinks you should be focusing on something else. It means healing your own trauma instead of spending all your energy helping other people heal theirs. It means being okay with someone being upset that you won't do what they want you to do. The wildest thing happens when you become selfish in this way. You actually become a better friend, a better partner, a better family member. Because now you're not resentful. You're not running on empty. You're not doing things from a place of obligation. You're doing things from a place of genuine choice, which means you actually show up fully. You're present. You're not seething internally about all the things you're sacrificing. You're not keeping score. You're just genuinely there. And that's worth so much more than showing up to something while you're miserable and exhausted and resentful. I know someone who used to say yes to everything. She was the person you called when you needed something. She was reliable, she was helpful, she was kind, and she was miserable. She wasn't living her own life anymore. She was living everyone else's life. Then one day, she just decided to be selfish. She told her friend group that she was going to be less available. Some of them got upset. Some of them accused her of changing. But you know what? The people who actually cared about her adapted, and she found she had time and energy to pursue something she'd been dreaming about for years. She started a business. It's thriving now. And you know what the funny thing is? The people who were upset that she was less available are actually more impressed with her now because she's building something. She's creating. She's alive in a way she wasn't before. So I'm going to ask you, what are you giving your time and energy to that's not actually serving you? Who are you saying yes to because you don't know how to say no? What is it costing you to be available to everyone all the time? And what would become possible if you decided to protect your own time with the same fierceness that you probably protect other people's time? That's the question worth sitting with. Can I ask you something? When was the last time you sat in complete silence with no phone, no music, no distractions, and actually felt okay? When was the last time you were alone with your own thoughts and you didn't feel like you were going to lose your mind? Because if you're being honest, if the answer is, I don't know, or I can't remember, then I think you're missing something really fundamental about building a strong life. Most people are terrified of silence. They're terrified of being alone. And so they fill every second with something. They wake up and immediately check their phone. They go to sleep with music playing. They drive with podcasts or audiobooks or talk radio on. They eat meals while scrolling or watching TV. They work in environments with constant noise. And I think a lot of this is actually not because people like noise. I think it's because being alone with their thoughts is the last thing they want to do. Because in the silence, they have to face themselves, and that's scary. I think about this a lot because I grew up in a really loud household. Lots of people, lots of noise, lots of chaos. Silence felt weird and wrong. And then as a teenager, I discovered podcasts and audiobooks and music, and I filled every second with sound. And I did that for years. I didn't realize I was avoiding myself. I didn't realize that the reason I couldn't hear my own intuition, the reason I couldn't make decisions that felt right, the reason I was always second-guessing myself was because I'd never actually learned to listen to myself. I was too busy listening to everyone else. Then one day I had a health issue and I couldn't listen to anything for a while. It was temporary, but it was incredibly uncomfortable. And in that discomfort, something shifted. I had to sit with my thoughts. I had to face some things I'd been running from. I had to feel some feelings I'd been distracting myself from feeling. And it was awful. It was really awful. But on the other side of it, I found something. I found a version of myself that had been quiet the whole time, waiting for me to shut up and listen. Here's what I learned. Silence isn't punishment. Silence is data. It's the space where you can actually hear yourself. It's the space where you can access your own wisdom. It's the space where you can process things instead of just pushing them down with distraction. It's the space where creativity lives. It's the space where actual change happens. But you can't access any of that if you're too busy running from the silence. Think about the strongest people you know. Think about the people who are most clear about who they are and what they want. I'm going to guess they're probably people who are comfortable with silence. They're people who can sit alone and not feel like they're losing their mind. They're people who aren't desperate to fill every second with external stimulation. There's a reason for that. When you're comfortable alone, you're not dependent on other people for your own sense of okayness. You don't need someone texting you back to feel valuable. You don't need to post something to get validation. You don't need to be around people to feel like you exist. And that independence is powerful. I met someone who was the opposite of comfortable with silence. He was this guy named David who couldn't be alone for even an hour without getting anxious. He'd text people, he'd scroll endlessly, he'd turn on music or TV even if he wasn't really listening to it. And the thing is, it showed up in every part of his life. He couldn't be in a relationship without becoming dependent and kind of clingy. He couldn't be at a job without constantly needing affirmation. He couldn't make decisions because he was too busy checking with other people to see if they thought it was a good idea. His whole life was outsourced. Then he got into meditation, just randomly. A friend suggested it, and he was desperate enough to try anything. And at first, it was torture. Sitting with his thoughts was the last thing he wanted to do. But he kept doing it, and over time, something shifted. He started to actually like being alone. He started to trust his own judgment. He started making decisions that felt right to him instead of constantly second-guessing himself. His relationships actually improved because he wasn't coming from a place of need anymore. He was coming from a place of choice. He was choosing to be with people because he wanted to, not because he couldn't be alone. So here's my invitation to you. Find some silence. Maybe it's 5 minutes. Maybe it's 30 minutes. Maybe it's an hour on a weekend morning. But find some quiet space and sit with it. Don't try to fix anything. Don't try to be productive with it. Just be there. And if it's uncomfortable, that's good. That means you need it. That means there's something inside you that's been waiting for you to slow down enough to hear it. Your intuition is always there. Your wisdom is always there. Your authentic self is always there. But sometimes the noise is so loud that you can't hear any of it. Give yourself the gift of silence. Give yourself the gift of your own company. I want to talk about something that I think is criminally undervalued in our culture, and that's the power of actually knowing things. Not having a vague idea about something, not following what everyone else is doing, not just accepting what you've been taught without questioning it. I'm talking about genuinely studying something, understanding it deeply, becoming competent in a real way. Here's what I've noticed. Most people go through life without understanding the systems that are affecting them. They don't understand how money actually works. They don't understand psychology and how their own mind works against them. They don't understand nutrition and how food affects their energy and mood. They don't understand communication and why their relationships keep repeating the same patterns. They don't understand their own industry, and so they're always at the mercy of other people's decisions. They're not educated, they're just existing. They're passengers in their own life. And then I see other people who decided to get educated. They decided to understand the thing they cared about or the thing they needed to understand to move forward. And it's not even the same game anymore. It's like they're playing a completely different sport. Someone who understands how their mind works through psychology is not going to fall for the same emotional manipulation that catches other people. Someone who understands nutrition is not going to be confused and manipulated by diet companies. Someone who understands how money works is not going to be dependent on a job. Someone who understands communication is not going to keep having the same conflicts in their relationships. I know a woman, Priya, who decided to educate herself about investing. And I know that sounds boring, but stick with me. She realized she was spending all her energy on making money, but she didn't understand what she was supposed to do with it once she had it. So she read books, she watched videos, she took a course, she joined investment groups, she practiced with small amounts of money. It took her about a year of intentional learning, and now she has a very different relationship with money. She's building wealth instead of just earning a salary. She's not dependent on a job the same way. She understands opportunities that other people don't see. She can smell financial manipulation from a mile away. And all of that came from deciding to educate herself instead of staying ignorant. The thing about knowledge is that it's actually free now. Like, genuinely free. You have access to more information than any human in history has ever had access to. You can learn anything. You can understand anything. You can become competent in almost anything. But most people don't. Most people just continue being unknowledgeable about the things that affect them. And then they wonder why they keep hitting the same walls. I've been thinking about how many problems could be solved just through education. Like anxiety. A lot of anxiety comes from not understanding what's happening to your body and your mind. You could read one book about how your nervous system works, and suddenly your anxiety is a lot less scary. It's not gone, but now you understand it. Relationship problems. If people understood how attachment works, how communication works, what triggers different responses in different people, so many conflicts could be prevented or handled so much better. Financial stress. If people understood compound interest, diversification, and basic investing principles, they wouldn't be slaves to their jobs for 30 years. But here's the thing. People don't want to do the work. They want the result without the study. They want to be fit without understanding nutrition and exercise. They want to be wealthy without understanding finance. They want to be in healthy relationships without understanding themselves. They want to be confident without doing any of the internal work. And that's not how it works. There's no shortcut. There's no hack. There's just education and then living according to what you've learned. So I'm going to ask you, what's one area of your life that you keep struggling with where a lack of knowledge might be part of the problem? Is it a relationship issue? Is it a financial issue? Is it a health issue? Is it a career issue? Pick one. And then I want you to commit to educating yourself about it. Not scrolling on social media about it. I mean actually studying it. Read a book, take a course, find an expert and learn from them. Dedicate some time to becoming competent in this area. And watch what happens to your life when you actually understand the thing you've been struggling with. This is going to be a hard conversation because I'm going to ask you to look at your relationships and be honest about which ones are actually serving you. And I know that's not fun. We want to believe that everyone in our life is good for us. We want to believe that longevity in a relationship means it's worth keeping. We want to believe that just because someone is family, we have to keep them in our life no matter what. But the truth is, some people are toxic, and keeping them around is actively harming you. Toxic doesn't always mean dramatic. It doesn't always mean someone's yelling at you or being overtly abusive. Sometimes toxic is quiet. Sometimes toxic is someone who's been in your life for years and they just slowly drain your energy every time you interact with them. They make you feel small. They make you doubt yourself. They're not cheering for your dreams. They're subtly discouraging them. They gossip about you to other people. They compete with you disguised as support. They make jokes at your expense. They're never happy for you when things go well. They always have to make it about themselves. I had someone in my life who was like this. She was a friend I'd known for more than a decade. We had history together. We'd been through stuff. So I kept the friendship going, even though increasingly I noticed that I felt worse after spending time with her, not better. She had this way of asking you about your life, but not actually wanting to hear about it. She'd ask about your job and then immediately make it about her job. She'd ask about your relationship and then immediately start telling you all the problems in hers and expecting you to fix it. She wanted you to be enthusiastic about her life, but she could barely manage to smile when you told her good news. And here's the insidious thing about having toxic people in your life. You don't always see it clearly because there's familiarity and history and attachment. So you keep rationalizing it. You tell yourself you're being too sensitive. You tell yourself it's not that bad. You tell yourself you should just accept people as they are. But meanwhile, your energy is being drained, and your confidence is being eroded, and you're becoming a smaller version of yourself just to not upset them. One day, I just got tired. I got tired of making excuses for her. I got tired of feeling bad after every interaction. I got tired of caring more about her feelings than she cared about mine. And I made a choice to step back from the friendship. Not dramatically. I didn't send her a big confrontational letter. I just reduced contact. I didn't make plans. I didn't put in the energy. And you know what happened? It hurt for a little bit, but then something amazing happened. I had so much more energy. I had so much more space in my life for people who actually cared about me. I stopped doubting myself as much. I felt lighter. The thing about toxic people is that they're usually toxic to everyone, not just you. It's their pattern, it's how they relate, and sometimes they don't even realize it. Sometimes they're just as unhappy as everyone around them, but they're coping by bringing other people down. Regardless of the reason, it's not your job to tolerate it. It's not your job to fix it. It's not your job to manage their emotions or their reactions. It's your job to protect your own peace and your own growth. So I want you to think about the people in your life right now, and I want you to be honest about which relationships actually make you feel good about yourself and which ones consistently make you feel worse. Which people do you feel you can be yourself around? Which people do you feel like you have to perform for? Which people celebrate your wins? Which people are threatened by your wins? Which people lift you up? Which people put you down? Which people text you because they want to hear from you? Which people only text you when they need something? And then, I want you to do something brave. I want you to consider what it would look like to significantly reduce contact with people who are consistently making you feel worse, not better. I'm not saying you have to cut anyone off completely. Maybe you just stop initiating. Maybe you stop being available for their drama. Maybe you stop trying to be friends with people who clearly don't want to be your friend. And you know what? Some people are going to get upset. Some people are going to say you changed. Some people might even try to make you feel guilty. But that's their stuff, not yours. Your job is to protect your own energy and surround yourself with people who are genuinely cheering for you. Can we talk about standards? Can we talk about the fact that most people don't have any? And by standards, I mean the bare minimum you're willing to accept in your life, in your relationships, in your career, in how you're treated, in how you treat yourself. Most people have just kind of accepted whatever's available instead of deciding what they actually deserve. I think this shows up most clearly in relationships. I see people staying in situations that are clearly not working because they've convinced themselves that this is better than being alone. They have a partner who doesn't prioritize them, doesn't respect their boundaries, barely pays attention to them, and they're like, yeah, but at least I'm not lonely. That's such a low bar. That's, hey, I'll accept someone as long as they exist in the same space as me. But you know what you get when you have that bar? You get a situation where you're actually more lonely than if you were alone. Because at least if you were alone, you wouldn't be with someone who makes you feel invisible. I had a friend who was in a relationship like this. She would text her boyfriend and not get a response for hours. He'd make plans and then cancel last minute. When they were together, he'd be on his phone the whole time. He didn't ask her about her life. He didn't support her dreams. He barely seemed interested in her. And when I asked her why she stayed, she said, "But he's never cheated on me. He's not violent. He's actually kind of nice sometimes." So her bar was not actively hurting me in obvious ways. That's not a standard. That's rock bottom. Eventually she left him, and the first few months were hard because she missed the familiarity, even though she didn't miss him as a person. But then something shifted. She started dating other people, and she was shocked at how different it could be. She went on dates with guys who actually asked her questions about herself, who wanted to spend time with her, who were excited to hear about what was going on in her life, who showed up when they said they would. And she realized what she'd been missing wasn't a person, it was someone who actually valued her. This isn't just about romantic relationships, though. This is about your entire life. It's about your career, too. How many people are working jobs that don't pay them well, don't utilize their skills, don't excite them because they convinced themselves it was the best they could get? They're like, well, at least I have a job. But what if you had standards? What if you decided that you deserved a job that paid you fairly for your work, that used your strengths, that had growth potential, that didn't make you miserable? How would your life change? I know someone who decided to raise their standards around work. He was doing contract work, making okay money, but constantly stressed and never knowing when the next paycheck would come. His friends were all telling him to be grateful that at least he had work, but he decided he was going to aim for something better. He got trained in a new skill. He built up his portfolio. He applied for positions he thought he wasn't qualified for. And you know what? He found a job that paid 40% more with actual benefits, with stability, with a team he liked. The only difference was he decided he deserved more, and then he did the work to make it happen. Here's the thing about standards. They're not arrogant. They're actually the foundation of self-respect. When you have standards, you're literally saying, this is what I believe I deserve. This is the minimum I'm willing to accept. And then you enforce them. You don't accept less than that. You don't stay in situations that don't meet your standards. You don't settle for people who don't treat you the way you deserve to be treated. You don't take jobs that don't pay fairly. You don't let people disrespect you. You don't accept behavior you said you wouldn't accept. So, I'm going to ask you to sit down and actually write out your standards. What do you deserve in a romantic relationship? What kind of treatment is a hard no for you? What kind of behavior are you not willing to tolerate? How much should you be paid for your work? How much respect do you deserve from people in your life? How much time should you spend on things that actually matter to you? Be specific. Be real. Don't write down what you think you should want. Write down what you actually need. And then I want you to look at your life and see where you're currently accepting less than your standards. And then I want you to change it. Not eventually, now. I need to talk about something that I think our culture has gotten really wrong. And that's the idea that a good life should be comfortable, that a successful life should be smooth, that if you're experiencing pain, you're doing something wrong. I think that's a lie that's keeping people stuck. I think pain, heartbreak, failure, these are actually the things that develop you. These are the things that build actual strength. Think about physically how strength builds. You don't get stronger by doing things that are comfortable. You get stronger by stressing your muscles beyond what they're used to. You get stronger by doing things that hurt a little bit. And then your body adapts and gets stronger. The same thing happens emotionally. You don't develop emotional strength by having a life where nothing bad ever happens. You develop emotional strength by going through hard things and choosing how to respond to them. I've watched people go through heartbreak and come out of it completely transformed. Not because the heartbreak was good. It wasn't. It was painful and awful. But they learned about themselves. They learned what they will and won't tolerate. They learned what they're capable of surviving. They learned who they are when they're not defining themselves through someone else. They became more whole because of the loss. Not in spite of it, but because of it. I had this experience myself with failure. I started a business that completely flopped. We lost money. It was embarrassing. For a while, I felt like a failure. Not just like I'd failed at something, but like I was a failure as a person. And then I realized something. That failure taught me more about myself, about money, about marketing, about what I'm actually good at than years of success would have. Because success doesn't require you to learn anything. You just do the thing and it works. But failure? Failure makes you examine everything. It makes you figure out what went wrong and what you need to do differently next time. And here's the thing. Every single person who's doing something significant has failed. Like genuinely, repeatedly failed. The people who are building things, who are taking risks, who are pursuing their dreams, they've all failed multiple times. They've all experienced rejection. They've all experienced loss. But they don't talk about it the way people talk about failure now, like it's shameful. They talk about it like it's a necessary part of the process. They talk about it like it's feedback. They talk about it like it made them better. So if you're going through something hard right now, I want you to know that this might actually be the thing that changes everything. This might be the failure that teaches you what you need to know to succeed next time. This might be the heartbreak that teaches you what you actually deserve in a relationship. This might be the loss that teaches you what actually matters to you. This might be the pain that teaches you how strong you actually are. You're not broken. You're becoming. And some of that becoming is going to hurt. That's just what growth feels like sometimes. This is one of the most powerful things I've learned, and I'm going to say it straight. The situation didn't create your suffering. Your perspective on the situation created your suffering. And what that means is that you have more power in this moment than you might realize. Let me give you an example. Two people lose their job on the same day. One person's perspective is, "Oh my God, this is a disaster. I'll never find another job. Everything is falling apart. This is proof that I'm not good enough." The other person's perspective is, "Okay, this job wasn't working for me anyway. Now I have the time to find something better. This is actually an opportunity." Same situation, completely different emotional experience. Completely different outcome. One person spirals and becomes depressed. The other person uses the time to improve their skills and finds a better job. I'm not saying that if you just have a positive attitude, your problems will disappear. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that your perspective is actually a variable you can control. You can look at the same situation and choose different meanings, and that choice affects how you feel and how you respond and what becomes possible. I know someone who got a serious health diagnosis, and she had a choice in how to frame it. She could have framed it as, "My body is broken, and this is the beginning of the end." Or she could frame it as, "This is actually a wake-up call that my body's been trying to send me for a while, and now I have a chance to really take care of myself." She chose the second one, and now she's completely changed her lifestyle. She's healthier than she's been in years, not because the diagnosis changed, but because her perspective on the diagnosis changed. Here's the thing about perspective. Most people think it's fixed. They think their interpretation of events is just the truth, but it's not. Your interpretation is filtered through your beliefs, your past experiences, your fears, your hopes, your assumptions. Someone else looking at the exact same situation might see something completely different, and neither of you is objectively right. You're both just operating from different perspectives. So what if you deliberately chose a more empowering perspective? What if when something bad happened, instead of your first thought being, "This is the worst," you asked, "What is this trying to teach me?" Or, "How can this actually be useful?" Or, "What becomes possible now that this happened?" That's not toxic positivity. That's not denying that something is hard. It's just choosing to look for the useful angle instead of spiraling in the catastrophic angle. Both are available to you, but most people default to catastrophic because that's what their brain learned to do. I want to tell you something that's going to sound crazy, but I actually believe it. You're one decision away from an entirely different life. Not a year from now, not after you lose the weight or make more money or find the right person. Right now, today, this second. One decision and everything changes. That decision is the decision to stop being the person you've been and start being the person you're trying to become. That's it. That's the whole thing. The moment you decide, "I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not accepting this. I'm not being this version of myself anymore," everything starts to shift. Not because the world changed, because you changed. And when you change, everything around you responds to that change. I've seen this happen over and over. People get to a point where they're just done. They're done with the same patterns. They're done with the same results. They're done with the same way of being. And they make a decision. Not a plan, not a strategy, just a decision. I'm done being small. I'm done tolerating this treatment. I'm done blaming everyone else. I'm done being stuck. And then the way they show up changes. The choices they make change. The energy they put out into the world changes. And the universe responds to that. The thing about a real decision is that it comes with commitment. You're not kind of deciding. You're deciding. You're not seeing if it works. You're committed to making it work. You're willing to do whatever it takes. And that willingness changes everything. Because most people never really decide. They're kind of hoping things change. They're kind of thinking about changing, but they haven't decided. The moment you actually decide, the game changes. Let's talk about something very practical, taking care of your body and your mind. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. You cannot build a strong life on a weak foundation. You can't expect your mind to be clear if your body is running on no sleep and junk food. You can't expect to have emotional resilience if you're not moving your body. You can't expect to handle stress well if you're eating processed food and sitting still all day. I think about this a lot because I used to be someone who would do all the work on my mindset and my beliefs and my perspective, but I wasn't taking care of my body at all. I was sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night. I was eating whatever. I wasn't exercising. I was just pushing myself on willpower and coffee. And you know what I discovered? No amount of mindset work can compensate for a body that's not taken care of. Because your body doesn't care about your positive affirmations. Your body cares about sleep and nutrition and movement. And when your body's needs aren't being met, your mind suffers. Your mood suffers. Your ability to handle stress suffers. Everything suffers. I started paying attention to the basics. I started getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I started eating real food most of the time. I started moving my body regularly. And I'm not exaggerating when I say it changed my life. I had so much more energy. I was so much clearer mentally. I could handle stress so much better. My anxiety went down significantly. My ability to focus improved. All of that from just taking care of the basics. And here's the thing about taking care of your body. It's not about looking a certain way. It's not about fitting into an ideal. It's about building a body that can support the life you want to live. It's about having the energy to do the things that matter to you. It's about having a strong nervous system that can handle what life throws at you. It's about literally building yourself stronger so you can handle challenges better. So I'm going to ask you to evaluate your basics right now. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you moving your body? Are you eating food that nourishes you? Are you managing your stress? Are you spending time in nature or in sunlight? Are you connecting with people? These things aren't optional if you want to build a strong life. They're foundational. You can't skip them and then wonder why you don't have the energy or the mental clarity or the emotional resilience to build the life you want. You know what one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself is? Knowing what to let go of. Knowing what's not serving you and choosing to release it. Not holding on to things because of history or habit or fear. Just letting them go. Making space for what's actually good for you. I've been thinking a lot about how much of our mental space and emotional energy we waste holding on to things we've already outgrown. Old relationships, old identities, old versions of ourselves, old dreams that don't excite us anymore. We cling to them because there's familiarity in them. We cling to them because we don't know who we are without them. We cling to them because we're scared of what comes next. But in holding on to them, we're blocking ourselves from becoming who we're actually meant to become. I had this friend who held on to a relationship that had already ended emotionally about 2 years longer than she should have. They weren't fighting. They just weren't connected anymore. But she couldn't let go because she was scared of being alone. So she held on. And in holding on, she didn't meet anyone else. In holding on, she didn't grow. In holding on, she just got more resentful and sad. And she knew this was happening, but she still couldn't let go. Until one day, she just got tired. She got tired of living a half life. She got tired of protecting something that was already dead. And she let it go. Not because she didn't love him. She did. But she loved herself more. And that was the turning point. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop trying to control or hold on to something that's no longer working. It means you accept that it's finished and you move forward. And the beautiful thing is that when you let go, you make space for better things. You make space for new relationships. You make space for new experiences. You make space for new versions of yourself. Okay, I'm going to say something that sounds crazy, but I actually think the most successful people in the world have a kind of healthy delusion. They believe they can do things before they have any evidence that they can. They believe in themselves so much that they just start doing it and figure it out as they go. And other people call it confidence, but really it's like a delusion that if you keep it long enough, it becomes real. Think about people who started companies from their garage. They didn't have a business degree. They didn't have capital. They didn't have connections. They didn't have evidence that they'd succeed. But they believed they could. That delusion kept them going long enough to actually make it real. They failed a lot. They made mistakes. But the belief came first. The belief that, I can figure this out, or this idea is good, or I'm capable of doing this. And because they believed it, they did what it took to make it true. Most people don't have that delusion. They wait for proof. They wait until they feel ready. They wait until everyone tells them they can do it. And by the time that happens, they're older and they've lost the belief that anything's possible. Their reality is limited by what they can see right now. But what if you decided to be delusional in a good way? What if you decided to believe in something before you have proof? What if you decided to pursue a dream even though you don't know if you'll succeed? That's where life actually begins. Let me talk about something that sounds boring but actually isn't. Your daily routine. Because here's what I've discovered. Your routine is where your actual life happens. It's not the big moments. It's not the vacations or the celebrations. It's the day in and day out. It's what you do when nobody's watching. It's what you do when you don't feel like it. That's what determines who you actually are and where your life is actually going. I know someone who spent a lot of time thinking about being healthy. She'd talk about wanting to be fit. She'd think about starting to exercise. But she didn't have a routine, so her health never actually changed. She'd do a workout one day, then nothing for a week, then suddenly remember and do 3 workouts, and then nothing again. She was reactive instead of systematic. Then she designed a routine. She decided that she was going to move her body at 6 a.m. every morning, no matter what. Even if she didn't feel like it, even if she was tired. It was just what she did. And within a few months, she was the healthiest she'd ever been. Not because one workout changed her, but because the routine compounded over time. The thing about a routine is that when you stick to it consistently, you're teaching your brain something very important. You're teaching it that you're someone who keeps promises. You're teaching it that you're someone who shows up. You're teaching it that you're reliable, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And that changes your identity. You stop being someone who wants to be healthy. You become someone who is healthy. You stop being someone who wants to work on their business. You become someone who works on their business. The routine is what makes the identity shift possible. Someone can reject you, and you can choose to feel shame about it, or you can choose to see it as information. Someone can betray you, and you can choose to feel bitter about it forever, or you can choose to learn from it and move forward. Someone can criticize you, and you can choose to internalize it as proof that you're not good enough. Or you can choose to examine whether it's useful feedback and then let the rest go. Same events, different emotional experiences, and the difference is the choice. I'm not saying you should just ignore your emotions or push them down. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you should feel your emotions fully, but you shouldn't let them run your life. You should feel the sadness, but then ask yourself what you need to do next. You should feel the anger, but then decide what to do with it. You should feel the fear, but then move forward anyway. The emotions are information. They're not commands. They don't have to dictate your behavior unless you let them. This might sound depressing, but I promise it's actually the most hopeful thing you can hear. Nobody's coming to save you. There's no knight in shining armor. There's no mentor who's going to hand you success. There's no parent, no partner, no boss, nobody who's going to give you the life you want. You have to build it yourself. And here's why that's actually good news. It means you have complete power. I think so much of people's suffering comes from waiting for someone to notice them, waiting for someone to fix their problems, waiting for permission, waiting for the right moment, waiting for someone to tell them they're good enough. And while they're waiting, their life is passing by. The person they could have become is dying. The dreams they could have pursued are fading. But nobody's waiting. Nobody's coming. It's just you and your choices. Here's the truth. The moment you stop waiting for someone else to change your life and start building your own life, everything changes. Because now you're the author. Now you're in control. Now you're not waiting for permission. You're taking it. You're not waiting for a moment. You're creating it. You're not waiting for someone to believe in you. You're believing in yourself. And that changes everything. That's actually liberating. That's actually where your power is. And this is the final big one. Your life is your responsibility, not your parents' responsibility, not your circumstances' responsibility, not society's responsibility. Yours. You came into this world with a body and a mind and a heart. And everything that happens from that point on is your job to manage, your job to heal, your job to build, your job to take responsibility for. Yes, some people have harder circumstances than others. Yes, some people have trauma that they didn't choose. Yes, some people have been dealt cards that seem unfair. That's all true. But at some point, you have to stop blaming your circumstances and start building your life anyway. You have to take responsibility for the healing. You have to take responsibility for the growth. You have to take responsibility for the decisions. And the moment you do, you take your power back. I know that sounds harsh, but I actually think it's the most loving thing I can tell you. Because if your life is your responsibility, that means you have the power to change it. It means you're not stuck. It means you're not a victim. It means everything that becomes possible is actually possible because of you. If you've made it all the way through this episode, I want you to know that you're not broken. You're not too late. You're not powerless. You're one decision away from a completely different life. One decision away from finally starting that thing you've been thinking about. One decision away from walking away from a situation that's draining you. One decision away from choosing yourself. One decision away from becoming who you're meant to be. And that decision is available to you right now. Not tomorrow. Not after something else happens. Right now. This second. You can decide. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take what we talked about in this episode and actually apply it. Not just listen and forget about it. Actually look at your life. Actually identify where you're selling yourself short. Actually see where you're waiting for someone else to fix things. Actually understand what you need to change. And then I want you to change it. Starting today, not eventually, today. And before you leave, I want to remind you again to like this video, to subscribe to the channel, and to check out the podcast playlist because there are so many other episodes that are going to help you on this journey. This is just the beginning of your transformation, and I'm so honored to be here for this part of it with you. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for being open to changing. Thank you for being willing to do the work. I believe in you. Now go believe in yourself. See you in the next one.